Why is everyone so mad about the new Glock V series pistol? I hope he's answering the question, not just asking it, because I can give a few answers. We'll see what he says. James Reeves, let's hope he answers our question.
Glock is redesigning the Glock. We're hearing about these V models that are coming out.
Oh wait, is that actually a picture of it? It looks pretty much the same, at least externally from the side. It's got a V on it. Other than the V on the frame and the slide, it looks the same.
We're hearing about these V models that are coming out. Am I pissed? Yeah, but I'm not blaming Glock for this, as some people on the internet have been. As of October 20,
Always blame Glock.
2025, internet chatter indicates that Glock plans to discontinue most of its current commercial handgun lineup around November 30, 2025, with the exception of the Slimline family, and they're going to replace these with V models designed to defeat illegal conversion devices. If you're a lawyer,
for anyone, James Reeves, who says you're not going to be mad at Glock, they're discontinuing all of the MOS versions except for the 10 mil, the 40, and the 45. The least popular ones. There's not going to be any MOS versions for any 9mm Glock. And yeah, we got some distributor exclusives over here. Glock 19X MOS. Okay. There's one 9mm MOS, and it's a distributor exclusive. Gross. C's are coming back, though.
People on social media with the usual two-way dick measuring contest where we compete with each other to see who has the biggest Second Amendment edgelord peen to win over our fans, followers, and viewers. I don't care if he lost half of his brain to methamphetamine abuse and blew up a kid's school bus.
What?
You can't deny a man his God-given right to own an over-the-counter man-portable air defense system.
I want to own one of those.
Of course, 2A advocacy is a good thing, but it's really hardcore and great for clicks when you get to call out a stepper from within the ranks. This week, it's Glock. Everyone's talking about how Glock's bending the knee by making it such that you can't convert Glocks to
okay, but they are, though.
Apart from Wish.com anymore.
But they are, though.
Bear in mind that every other manufacturer complies with this exact same rule Glock has managed to work around for the past 4 decades until recently. Now, if you've been living under a rock for the 2020s, the Glock Switch is a tiny aftermarket auto-sear. It attaches to the back of a Glock slide and it turns it into a machine pistol.
There's also drop-in auto-sears for AR-15s, and yet you can still buy an AR-15. Just because you can do something illegal to the gun. A drop-in AR-15 auto-sear, easier to convert than a Glock Switch, because you literally just drop it in. This, you got to take off that little back plate and then put this on, which is easier than just slapping a thing in there.
These devices are cheap, easily 3D printed. They're becoming more and more commonly used in street crime. Under federal law, whether we agree with it or not, presently, federal law, any device that enables full automatic fire is itself considered to be a machine gun subject to felony penalties. That's straight out of the NFA and Title 18. Now, ATF data shows a steep rise in machine gun conversion devices recovered at crime scenes over the past few years. Agencies recovered 148 conversion devices in 2019. 4 years later, 2023, 5,816. The DOJ has noted that
hold on.
These are Glock switches.
Hold on. You just chose the lowest of the years. The year before that, it was like 5 times as high. It went down that year. Obviously, if you include this one, the trend still goes up significantly. But that makes it seem more extreme than it was.
5,816. The DOJ has noted that a large share of these are Glock switches, although we don't have hard numbers. The city of Chicago, however, claims to have recovered 1,300 switched Glocks in 2024 in that city alone. Now, that's led to a lot of unnecessary negative governmental attention towards Glock. Most notably, California recently signed AB 1127, legislation
California.
The sale of pistols deemed readily convertible to machine pistols. Notably, it grandfathers in guns that were already possessed by Californians, while AB 1127 will face scrutiny under Bruin's history.
See, not in the back foot. Lightning links, such as Boogle, are easier. It does require swapping trigger group. Those ones require swapping trigger group. There's a drop-in auto-sear that's very similar to one of the FRTs. The one that PSR showed in I don't think it was his last video, one that PSR showed recently. It was a drop-in FRT, and there is a full auto conversion that drops in very similarly to that. Don't have to change out much of anything.
History and tradition test. I think California, they already knew this going in, of course they would, which is why they made the law narrowly tailored to impact only pistols readily convertible to full auto. Contrary to popular belief, they didn't ban Glocks by name. They just did it categorically, and they aren't taking guns already in circulation. So between this narrow scope that mirrors federal law and no confiscation, California's law may very well stand. Meanwhile, Glock is facing a handful of lawsuits across the U.S. Chicago sued Glock, and Glock just lost a motion to dismiss that suit last month. Minnesota sued Glock. They also beat Glock's motion to dismiss. New Jersey has sued Glock, and they prevailed against Glock's motion to dismiss just last week.
Those are some pretty terrible jurisdictions for gun companies, though.
They've also sued Glock this past February. It's probably going to go the same way. 12 states have sent Glock preservation of evidence letters. These are letters that basically say, hey, we're probably going to sue you, so we need to make sure you don't destroy any evidence. Please don't destroy these documents, these records relating to these categories. Now, as a lawyer, I'm just saying things look pretty rough for Glock right now. They're getting shut out of the California market, which is the third biggest market in the US. Every crime-riddled city is scapegoating Glock for their own problems, dunking on Glock's lawyers left and right. If those lawsuits win,
I would guess that if you actually looked at the arguments from the lawyers of the county or city and the arguments of Glock, they are not dunking on Glock. The presiding judge or whoever is just extremely biased. That's usually how things like that are. The drop-in part, if you drop in, a Glock switch or a drop-in auto-sear for an AR, the actual thing that you were dropping in is legally itself a NFA item and an illegal NFA item, because thanks to the Hughes Amendment, any new manufactured machine gun is illegal for civilians to have. And so why and how Glock is bending the knee is they're being like, oh, yeah, of course. This device that's very similar to devices that exist for many other guns, we're going to change how our gun operates because we're getting a little pushback. Other companies aren't doing that. You don't see every single AR-15 company changing the AR-15 design so that it can't take drop-in auto-sears. Glock is bending the knee, for sure. Asteroid. They're bending the knee because they'd go bankrupt fighting every lawsuit. Glock has enough money. Glock has so much money. They can fight the lawsuits. And they're going to be fighting the lawsuits anyway. None of these lawsuits are just going to vanish because Glock did a design change. Like one or two of them might, but there's a lot of them. The vast majority are not going to go anywhere. Megalum, Gaston would have never done this, yeah. Gaston Glock never would have allowed this to happen. Anarchist, this won't stop the lawsuits. The lawsuits are still going to happen, and Glock is going to be spending money both on lawsuits as well as all the money that they spent redesigning whatever they changed in the gun. Let's keep in mind, this gun is still going to be on the market, and probably within a week, almost definitely within 2 weeks, there will be a full auto conversion. There will be. It is just a fact. Ferocious lawsuits are going to increase and be more ridiculous now. It's an insane level of knee bending for nothing. Yeah, that is a good point, actually. I had not considered that. But the fact that Glock is changing the design is basically, and a lot of people will see this legally, as them admitting fault. People will see it as Glock admitting fault, so they had to change. Glock is basically just trying to commit suicide. It's crazy. Ferocious. Woman in charge. V models. The Glock vagina models. Because now it's a woman in charge. I see it. I understand. I see the vision now.
Glock could face massive money judgments, court orders to stop selling legacy Glocks anyways. If you were keeping up with these court cases, you can kind of see where this is going. Glock loses one or more of these cases. They'll probably get ordered to redesign the guns to close the conversion loophole anyways, after tens of millions of dollars in legal fees, after getting hit with multiple massive money judgments, after getting shut out of markets like California, and after losing possibly lucrative government contracts or law enforcement agency contracts. The overall impact could be hundreds of millions.
They wouldn't lose any law enforcement agency contracts. Law enforcement and government agencies have never had to capitulate to whatever local or state law was in effect. Law enforcement agencies there's always a way for them around it.
Of dollars under a worst case scenario, and that's barring any silly civil judgments for like $1 billion. In my eyes, Glock is arguably a victim here because their firearms are being misused by criminals who anecdotally don't seem to be.
I'll agree with that part. Glock is a victim here. Glock is a victim here of criminals misusing their product, as well as a court system that is rigged against them.
That are bringing these suits, and instead it's Glock and law-abiding gun owners like you and I who are now paying the price for that because this sucks. Be that as it may, Glock looks to be in pretty dire straits, so why are we mad at Glock? Some of us see it as a sound litigation strategy. Some of us see it as corporate survival. Some of it just see it as an astute
It's corporate
business
suicide.
practice. While others of us, a lot of us, see it as capitulation, bending the knee. I think there are fair interpretations on either side, but you already know where Glock fanboy number one's leaning. Why aren't we mad at HK for welding carrier blocks in civilian MP5s that prevent me from even using a legal full auto trigger pack in my
I am mad about that.
SP5? Why aren't
The same as I'm mad about HK doing all the other nonsense that they do. Like the SL8s with the redesigned mag wells to take single stack magazines, the redesigned bolts to only work with single stack magazines. Crazy stuff. I'd never have liked that HK did that.
Mad at FN for not selling M249 saws out of the back of a pickup truck to civilians at cost while also selling them to the government. Why aren't we mad at B&T for retailing the semi-auto APC9 Pro for $2,000 plus instead of just mailing out MP9s to anyone with a credit score
I'll take one.
over 600? Why aren't we just as mad at
is my credit score over 600? Yeah, it is. My credit score is over 600. I'll take one.
Us the SSRS 30mm automatic grenade launcher with a waiver from the Hague Convention as we are at Glock for more or less complying with federal law that's already been in existence? Are they all just anti-gun 2A steppers now? Where do we draw the line? I think we all follow, whether we know it or not, what I call the Second Amendment outrage index, or the SOI. You run every controversy
The SOI
formula in your head to figure out how mad you're supposed to be at a gun company. And that formula looks like this, whether you know it or not. Outrage equals infringement times visibility divided by necessity. In other words, how much a company's action actually hurts gun rights.
Chat, are you a Second Amendment soy calculator? Oh, you guys can't see. Hold on. Hand cam, move. The soy. Or it could be the Second Amendment outrage SAO index. The SAO index. I don't know which one's worse.
Multiplied by how loudly the public sees it, divided by how necessary it was to stay legal or stay alive as a company. That gives you your raw outrage score. We all do this in our heads, whether we know it or not. Let's take two almost identical examples to allow me to illustrate how
I get mad works. No matter how visible it is.
So their guns can't be readily converted into illegal machine guns versus TommyBuilt recalling all of their HK G36 clones because they could be easily converted to machine guns and billing customers for the work. We're mad at Glock for being steppers, but I don't remember.
I was mad at B&T about this. I wasn't as mad about them billing customers because small company, they literally would have gone under. But the fact that they had to do it at all, I wasn't mad at B&T. I was mad at the law enforcement, the ATF.
I remember anyone being mad at Tommy Bostic. Well, I mean, not on Second Amendment grounds. Let's score it. Let's pick a random number. 50 points out of 100 on an infringement scale for failing to make your guns readily convertible to full auto. Halfway to complete tyranny. 50 out of 100. Maybe not, but just for the sake of argument, we're going to use that number. Now, visibility. Let's multiply. 90% of you don't know or care about the carrier block welded into the HK-SM5 receiver. You can't be mad at what you don't see. On the other hand, a perfect example of how powerful visibility is as a factor, Marty Daniel. He's one of the most active pro-Second Amendment advocates in the country. I wrote the PLCAA Clarification Act. He personally helped me get it passed, personally. in 2 states, Montana and
What
West
a Chad.
Virginia. It's gaining traction elsewhere. He's a member of the Bill of Rights Defenders, a coalition of companies that bankroll pro-gun lobbying and litigation. He's in the trenches. But in 2022, Congress hauled him in to testify about gun manufacturer accountability. They asked, do you support abolishing the ATF? Right after Ruger's CEO said no, Marty said,
we have heard today support for abolishing the ATF.
Oh my
Do you
goodness, loud.
support abolishing the ATF?
We are licensed dealers and we are licensed manufacturers. We sell through, we are regulated by the ATF, and we are not in support at this time of eliminating the ATF.
Now, did that change anyone's gun rights? Not really, not in any tangible way. But many people saw it as unnecessary, and it was highly visible. As a lawyer, I'm thinking to myself, good job, Marty. This was a total trap. There's no right answer. Just say what they want to hear, live to fight another day. But so much of the gun community felt betrayed by it, and they still haven't let it go, even though I can't think of someone who fights harder for the Second Amendment.
Hold on. There are reasonable things that the ATF does do. And I think the ATF would be perfectly capable of doing those reasonable things if you took away 96% of what they do. I think 4%, maybe less, of what the ATF does is good.
Then Marty Daniel. Glock's making national news. Your grandmother is calling you, asking about Glock switches and who's this O-block switchy on? It's very visible, 100 points of visibility. Meanwhile, 80% of you don't know who TommyBuilt is, maybe 90. So we'll call it 20 points. Divide by the...
TFB viewers definitely know who TommyBuilt is, or was.
Necessity scale. If Glock has been forced at gunpoint by the government to do it, we're not mad. That's where the disconnect starts. Non-lawyers out there right now see this as unnecessary until Glock's been run into the ground with lawsuits and judgments and legislation. They think Glock doesn't have to do it now. If they had
they don't have to do it now.
We'd be mad at the people forcing them, not at Glock the company. Lawyers, on the other hand, or at least people who have been witnessing the trajectory of these lawsuits and these regulations, they see Glock's actions as probably inevitable, but compare TommyBuilt. TommyBuilt's customers got letters from the ATF saying, look, you got 3 options. Surrender the firearm, destroy the receiver, or you can send it back to TommyBuilt to block the conversion path. Were people mad at Tommy Bostic? Oh yeah, big mad. But not for being like a red coat or a stepper or bending the knee, which is funny because he's doing the same thing as Glock. And he even charged customers for the conversion.
No, TommyBuilt did not do the same thing as Glock. Glock hasn't gotten this letter. Glock is just being threatened with lawsuits. Also, Glock isn't basically a little one-man company. TommyBuilt wasn't a one-man company, but it was a very small company. Glock is a massive international company with lots of money, lots of lawyers on staff. TommyBuilt's some guy in a big garage. What? This is, no. That's not the same thing at all. Anarchist. TommyBuilt was told to fix it or die. Glock is just being sued. Exactly. Now, if Glock got this letter, then there might be an argument. Not there is an argument. There could be an argument. But they don't have this letter. Holy jeez. What did Tommy do? Well, arguably, TommyBuilt didn't do anything wrong. But the ATF said that a TommyBuilt TG36, their G36 rebuilds, were easily convertible to a machine gun, which first of all is bogus, but also there's nothing they could do about it. The ATF made their ruling. TommyBuilt could have spent millions of dollars and years in court, but it again is a couple guys in a garage.
Because if he didn't, he'd go bankrupt. We saw that as legally and financially necessary. Glock made
Rare Breed did it. Rare Breed also didn't do the whole process. Rare Breed backed out. They took a settlement. They didn't go through the whole process. Rare Breed also was working with someone. I don't remember who it was. And they also were still making products. Rare Breed didn't have a single staple product that got shut down completely. TommyBuilt had their one big staple product shut down completely. Rare Breed had a lot of different things they were selling.
Guns can't be readily converted to full auto. That's 50 points of infringement, we said, right? Times 100 visibility points. Necessity, pretty low. You guys are saying because Glock hasn't been ordered to do it, they're doing it preemptively. Let's say it's a 10 on necessity scale. I disagree with that. But if you do all the math, that's 50 times 100 divided by 10, that's 500. Oof, that's a chafing outrage score. Now, TommyBuilt, same infringement score, right? 50. Visibility, 20 tops.
It's not the same infringement score. TommyBuilt got a letter from the ATF. Glock got cold feet because of some lawsuits. That is not the same infringement score.
Necessity, 100. He was literally ordered by the ATF, do it or you're going to jail. 50.
Yeah, see, Glock hasn't gotten that letter from the ATF. Glock has not gotten the you have to change it or else letter. It is not the same.
Times 20 divided by 100 equals 10. No one cares. And that's the difference. When something looks optional, the outrage explodes. When it's mandatory, we kind of move on. That's why people are mad at Glock for what's basically the exact same move. Ironically, people were upset at Tommy for not complying with the law, but mad at Glock now for the opposite. We're mad because we think
Glock is complying with something that's not a law. They're complying with the opinion of a couple courts, lower courts. Fake Nicks, isn't James a Glock fanboy too? So maybe biased? There's some bias going on here, for sure. Megalum, James kind of soying in the wrong direction, the opposite direction. Yeah. Ashtray. It's law in California, but the law in California doesn't call out Glock specifically. Glock has a very real argument they could make that their guns are not easily convertible. Because there's other guns you can buy in California. You can buy a California compliant AR-15, which, keep in mind, easier to convert to full auto illegally than a Glock. That's right, the law specifically called out Glock with cross-pattern sear or whatever. The justification for the law specifically called out Glock. The actual letter of the law does not call out Glock specifically. People arguing for the law used Glock to justify it, but the letter of the law does not call out Glock. The letter of the law calls out the sear. Perhaps. I have not actually read the law. I just know it doesn't use the word Glock.
Glock's move is optional. Within a lawyer's eyes, it really isn't. The issue here is more or less disagreement about whether or not Glock must necessarily do this versus what just looks like capitulation. And because visibility amplifies outrage, the stuff that's the most legally complicated is often the easiest to hate online because we don't get it. Now, sometimes by the formula, outrage is justified. Take Ruger in like the mid-90s, 1994 assault weapons ban. Ruger seemed to publicly support parts of it.
Seems to.
Of making some questionable comments, magazine capacity limits, going all the way back to Bill Ruger's infamous, no honest man needs more than 10 rounds. That wasn't compelled, it wasn't necessary, it was voluntary, it was highly visible, directly harmful to gun rights under the outrage index, a perfect 100 times 100 divided by 1, that's 10,000 outrage points, so mad I just shit my pants, maximum infringement, zero necessity, total visibility, that's when outrage makes sense. So before we torch Glock for doing what every other manufacturer already does, run it through your own outrage index.
Glock is not doing what every other company already does. Do you realize how many other companies make Glock clones, or effectively Glock clones, that have not changed to capitulate? It's a massive number. Gargantuan. But here Glock is, changing their design, admitting guilt that, yeah, our guns were easily convertible, so I guess we got to change them. The outrage is perfectly justified. I, in fact, think people aren't outraged enough.
I see this as inevitable, as necessary for Glock. For me, Glock didn't bend the knee. They just read the writing on the wall. They decided to get ahead of it, but hey, maybe I'm wrong.
He's
Tell
wrong.
me what
He's
you
wrong.
think in the comments. Are you
He's wrong.
Glock about it? Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.
Unbelievable. Can you believe James Reeves is such a bootlicker? I don't think he usually is. I think that's just a bad take. It is a bad take. A lot of the time, I agree with James Reeves, but that is that's one of the worst takes I've ever heard from him. Goodness sakes. That's crazy. That's right. Watch his follow-up video. Did he make a follow-up video? Did people get too angry at him? Goodness sakes, this guy looks like he looks like he just got off a bender. Oh my goodness. Let's see what he has to say.
For a deposition tomorrow. The comments on my Glock V series video, it just went live like 2 hours ago. And
I hope he got
there
justifiably
are like
roasted.
Comments in under 2 hours. Clearly, hot subject. Love the debate. Some of the takes are a little rough, but I'm glad that everyone's engaged. Now, a smart question that I saw in the comments that actually spurred me to make this video was, James, if a Glock is readily convertible with a switch and readily convertible firearms are considered machine guns under this definition you just read, does that make Glocks machine guns? There's something interesting that I found whenever I was responding to
That's a good question.
Comments. In the video that I just uploaded, I flashed the federal definition of machine gun, but I read aloud California's language. California's new law defines a machine gun using the readily convertible to a machine gun language. But the federal statute, the NFA, says shoots is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot automatically by a single trigger pull. Different words and an important distinction.
That is an important
so I'm
distinction.
looking at the language from...
Just like the important distinction between TommyBuilt and Glock's situation. Sorry. This little orange text behind me says readily convertible.
AB 1227, Control F. Section 2, Section 16880 of the Penal Code is amended to read, and we'll skip to C, the term machine gun includes any weapon deemed by the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives as readily convertible to a machine gun under Chapter 53, commencing with Section 5801 of Title 26 of the United States Code. Now let's jump over to Chapter 53, Title 26 of the U.S. Code. Control F, readily restored. And here you go. Machine gun means any weapon which shoots is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot. It doesn't say readily converted, even though that's what the California statute uses. Restored implies returning a firearm that was once capable of full auto fire to that condition. California's readily converted.
Okay. I see the argument he's making. However, if that text only specifically meant restored to a previous condition, then why has the ATF ruled that all open bolts are machine guns? Because they can be readily restored, even though the vast majority of them were made from the factory like that and cannot be restored to a condition they never were in. It's a rhetorical question. There's not an answer.
Language broader than the federal definition based on what appears to be an incorrect interpretation of federal law. Now, even though the statute doesn't define it, restored means brought back to a previous state, right? It had to have originally...
That's right. They haven't ruled that. They've just denied current designs. They've denied all current and past semi-auto open bolt designs, even though some of them definitely are not easily convertible. But it is a rule, and you can look up the rule. I don't know the actual rule number. I might be able to find it, but it is an actual rule. California literally fabricating federal law to reference and justify their BS.
Been a machine gun at some point in order to be restored to one, like a decommissioned M14. We'll talk about that in just a second, actually. Ignoring the Glock 18, of course, Glock was never designed to be a machine gun. It was designed and manufactured as a semi-automatic pistol. There's nothing to restore it to. You can only convert it into a machine gun. That's with an additional part, like a so-called Glock switch. But under federal law, the conversion part itself is the machine gun, not the host firearm that was never fully automatic to begin with.
And that's why you can have a serialized shoestring, because you can use a shoestring to make an AR-15 somewhat full auto.
And that's why this new language in AB 1127 becomes a problem, because it substitutes readily convertible for readily restored, as I just showed you, and actually dramatically expands what can be classified as a machine gun, potentially including firearms that were never designed to be automatic in the first place. But what does readily restored mean, since it isn't defined in the code? The Ninth Circuit actually defined what readily restored means in a case, United States v. 1 TRW rifle M14. Kind of a funny caption, right? It's the U.S. versus
I've never heard of
an
that
M14
case.
rifle.
I should go read it.
This is known as an in rem case. That's where you have the U.S. Or a lawsuit filed against a piece of property, right? So against 1 TRW rifle. This 2006 case, it was about an M14 rifle that had been decommissioned and welded back together into semi-auto configuration. The question was whether it still counted as a machine gun under federal law because it could be readily restored to fire automatically. The court found that it did. They said that since the gun was originally designed and used as a machine gun and could be returned to automatic fire with about 2 hours of work using tools and a stick weld, it qualified as readily restored. The key part, they looked at the definition of restored, brought back to a former or original state. In other words, the weapon had once been a machine gun. It could be brought back to that condition quickly and easily, and that's what the definition covers. It doesn't cover a Glock. Glocks were never designed or manufactured.
Do you know what else also was not originally designed or manufactured as a full auto, but made from the factory as a semi-auto? A open bolt Mac 10. Just gonna throw that one out there.
As machine guns.
I see the argument he's making, but there's too many holes in it.
Fire to return it to. There's no restoration, right? A switch or an auto-sear can convert one, but part itself, the part, not the Glock, is what meets the federal definition of machine gun. The switch is the device that enables automatic fire, and therefore it's the part that's regulated. It's the machine gun, the switch.
That's
while
correct.
The Glock is a semi-automatic pistol unless that part's attached. So,
and the part that enables the automatic fire is the machine gun. Glocks are not machine guns. Glock shouldn't be bending the knee.
Under the actual statutory language, how the courts have interpreted it, Glocks themselves can't be considered machine guns just because they can be modified, but the conversion devices can. Bottom line, Glock not a machine gun. It's just a gun that can be abused. The switch is the machine gun, and that's the difference between restored and converted. I'm really glad I read these comments. Thank you guys, because this was actually very enlightening for me to be able to find that California law actually doesn't mesh with federal law. Anyways, I'm going to bed. I got to step at tomorrow. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
I still don't fully agree with even that take, but he said some important stuff in there.